One. Take it away, Seth.
Hi there, I'm Seth Michael May, and you're watching Obscuria Films, where we review the films that you question, but we love. And for those of you who are on the question side, sometimes, maybe not tonight, some of us question why we love these films. Today's pick amongst us is by Judy Mayer, our horror expert, I would say.
Horror queen.
Our horror queen, yeah. She's been a host for the Horror Channel, right?
True. Yep.
True. And she's written several scripts, and she was an actress, but her focus really is that this girl loves horror. She's a horror queen, not a scream queen, but a horror queen. So take it away, Judy.
Hi, everyone. First, if you're interested, please like and subscribe our channel so you can get more of our shenanigans. So this week, I picked a film from 2013. It's a remake of a Spanish film called We Are What We Are. And it's this kind of obscure horror film. And I chose it because I love films that you watch it and it sits with you. So you not only get the enjoyment of watching it, or maybe for some you didn't enjoy it, because this film I think was scored 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It scored 86%.
By the
critics.
By the critics, it did well.
But by fans, it
didn't. And sometimes those movies actually end up being movies that I really like, the ones the critics like, but the audience doesn't get.
Yeah.
This was one of those.
So it's definitely a slow pace, but it's about a family. It's a family movie. So
did you see it with your family? Did you watch it with your family?
I watched it with my husband. Watched the first half hour, and his first comment was, "The guys are gonna hate this film." And I was like, ugh.
When was the first time that you watched it? Did you see it when it came out?
Yes. I think I actually saw this movie in theaters.
Yeah.
You did?
Think it come out. I'm trying to remember if I saw it. So do you remember, did you ever hear of a film thing called Movie Pass?
Oh,
yes. Yeah. It lasted
when it first
34 days. Yeah.
Early subscribers before it blew up. So I would always go see like one film a week. So I can't remember. I honestly can't remember if I saw it in the theaters, but I do remember seeing it like when it came out. I think it was in theaters, like select, and I was in New York at the time. And I remember it was the film that I would tell people to watch. I would also tell people, so people have this thing with horror when you say, oh, I like horror films, and they'll go, oh, no, I don't like it. It's like too gory for me. And I usually say things like, did you like, The Exorcist or Jaws? And they're like, oh, yeah, I like those movies. I'm like, so you do like horror. But I think people have this idea of like Eli Roth, 80s, 90s slasher films of like, oh, that's what horror is. But there's a huge umbrella to horror. So for me, and then there's the whole thing of what's the difference between horror and thriller, which that you could take a whole, because some are both. But what this film that I liked is that it's very slow paced. So it's a true film of you have to sit there and pay attention. It's not something that you could just like put on in the background. You need to sort of watch it. It's very subtextual. And it's about a family, and a lot of times there's not much dialogue that goes on. And what I just liked about it was that it really makes you think. It really gives you, especially towards the third act, I would say it's a slow burn, and then it's this huge visceral reaction. I was actually thinking when I was watching it, or earlier when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I would have loved to watch Sean's reaction to like the ending scenes. Yes, I don't know why.
I'll tell you, I have an anecdote. Go ahead.
Yeah. So so if anyone hasn't watched the movie yet, I would stop, because we're gonna discuss some spoilers. So not to ruin it for you. So if you want to watch the movie before we talk about it, I would stop here before we give any spoilers.
Before we tell people to stop here,
okay.
Judy, can you tell us what makes this movie so special without spoiling it, just so we can really get people? Because I want to just say one thing. We've done a handful of films by now. We've all cycled at least once or twice. Actually, I haven't done my second one yet.
Yeah.
But we're doing that one next. Okay. But you know, this for me, this was the first film that was, I'm not going to say a perfect film because I don't really know what that means, but this was a film that I don't have any problems with style wise. Everything about this film works for me, even more than the one that I chose before. This film is a film that works, and it works on a number of levels. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. The acting is unbelievable. The script writing and directing is incredible. And I would say that it's sort of like if you took like M. Night Shyamalan and like more horror and mixed it with the David Mamet vice grip storytelling, where it's just like the story just closes in on you as it goes along. It's got that kind of a feel to it. So if you like those kinds of movies, whether they're horror or not, I think you might appreciate this one. That's coming from a guy I don't really consider myself a horror guy. I appreciate some of them, but I loved this film. So that's my pitch to you guys to go out and watch this if you don't want to get the spoilers yet.
And to the viewer who's going to see this movie beforehand, just keep in mind in the box office it made $81,000.
And how much did it cost?
I couldn't
We can't
find that
figure it out
information.
from Wikipedia. Wikipedia
No,
doesn't say.
yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, but it looks about at least 2 million.
Yeah.
That film's at least 2
At
million.
least.
Yeah, if not 3. So I mean, and for the barometer, Pulp Fiction was 7 million. So if you see that's 7 million, something like this. I would say at least 2, maybe 3.
And also,
And
this is 20 years after Pulp Fiction.
It is, and $81,000. So just think about your college tuition. That's how much this made. That's all. I just think
Still,
that's
it's not
funny
theaters.
because I mean, like, yeah, I guess, I guess a good movie or whatever. I had some issues.
We're gonna get into that first, but
Okay.
but I just want to say, Judy, is there one last thing you want to say to tell people like why they need to see this movie, and Seth, why
Well,
they
here's
need
the
to see
other
this
thing.
movie?
Yeah, here's the other thing. So coming from my husband, who's like I consider a normie, he's not a filmmaker. He has like a corporate job. So I think of him as like your pretty much regular film goer, right? He watched the first 30 minutes with me and was like bored out of his mind and was like, guys, you're gonna hate this film. No way making, like, I almost second guessed my choice. I was like, oh, maybe I picked the wrong movie. Like, yeah, it's kind of slow. But what I noticed and what I remembered from last time is that every time I thought, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen, something surprised me. And I like that because I feel like in a lot of movies, it's so predictable, and you can still enjoy a predictable movie, but there's something special about when a movie really, truly catches you off guard and you're like, oh, that makes total sense, but like I didn't see that coming. You know, or you know what's going to happen, but you didn't know the way it was going to happen. So you're sort of sitting there trying to figure it out. I felt like there was that a lot in this movie where it seems it's like, it's so simple and not that complicated, but there's a lot going on,
It's like
which
Dances
I think
with
goes
Wolves.
to the writing as well.
Yeah, the writing, the sheriff is one of the screenwriters.
Right, hang on. Let's Seth make
Okay,
a
that's Seth.
pitch for why people, if you think people should see
I'm
this.
going to come in on this from like, my horse is coming in from the far left in the race on this. Isaac and I have very different tastes as far as what a film is. I'm much more character driven. The characters in this film are amazing. They're like deep. The acting is really deep. I wouldn't say that I'm a horror guy, but when done well, horror is my favorite genre. Like I like Aliens, I like Alien, I like this. I like Rosemary's Baby. I like really well acted horror films where you're like, wow, like these characters are acting in a way that I would act. Or even when they do something that you're like, well, now you're going off in the woods to get killed. You're like, yeah, I could see that happening. As a, you know, I like those scripts. I'm not like
Exorcist 3.
Yeah, well,
With George C. Scott. Judy knows.
And George DiCenzo, my mentor, is in Exorcist 3.
Oh,
and
that's a good one.
And Vivica Linfers was my mentor too. So I have a big thing with Exorcist 3.
Yeah,
but it's a well-acted movie.
It
It's a
is.
shame
Yeah,
it has
I
to be
would
number
say.
3. So that's my thing. I also know William Sage. We did a
Do
film
you?
together.
You
Who
know
plays the
him?
father. I know him. Yeah.
Because he was my biggest issue.
Wait,
Okay,
all right. So
we'll go there later.
Sean, and what are your reasons why people should stop this now and go watch the film? If you have any, if not, we'll get started.
Okay, yeah, so
Why
clicking
would you
for our
recommend
next-
this? Why would you recommend this?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I would recommend it because there are different sides of horror. I love horror. I love all genres, but what I like about horror is that it has the most rules. And I enjoy that because I like seeing the filmmakers.
Okay, so what did this movie get right?
It got a lot of stuff right, even though it was slow paced, which is fine with me. The pace was too slow. It was like Michael Haneke's Funny Games. It was
We're gonna get all into all that, but I want you to give us the pitch for what
Oh,
it got
sorry.
right. If you don't have anything to say, we'll just.
It got the cinematography right. I did like the actors for the most part. And it is like a slow burn, which is a different type of thing you have because there wasn't a lot of jump scares and there wasn't a lot of gore, but it was still tense. That's my pitch.
Awesome. Okay.
yeah.
So before we get into it, I'm just going to say, if you were found that compelling and you don't want the spoilers, you want to see it, go stop the film now, go see the movie and then come back. If you're not convinced and you're like, whatever, but you kind of want to hear what our reaction was to this film, we're going to get right into it now. So without further ado, who wants to take it away?
Sure. Bill Sage.
The biggest dissenter is going to go first today.
Bill Sage. He did not enunciate whatsoever.
Wow, that's a note we haven't heard in ever. But it's a
like
big
every
acting
time.
note.
Every time. It's like I think he smoked 3 cigarettes before each take and just let his voice rasp over, and that was kind of cool, but you got to speak in words, maybe not just syllables. I don't know. It's like you're not a country singer, Mr. Sage.
He kind of is a country singer, though.
Yeah, he does look it, and his career goes back to 1989. So he's been around, and looks like he did it all. And I guess he was like, as an actor, he's like, wow, this is a movie I'm the lead. I'm going to try something new, not just the CSI Miami shows that he does or the shows over here that he does where he's either a goon or a cop. He's like, this is me acting.
But that was one of the things that I found so compelling about his character is that he seemed so utterly, almost absurdly withdrawn and misanthropic. Like even when he was being nice, it was always weird and cold. Like when he was being friendly with the neighbor and grateful and giving her the gift, but he was just so abrupt with her too. It had a really wonderful sort of contradictory quality for me.
Oh, I see that.
Like the fact that he clearly has this crazy screwed up inner life, and like mumbles and is just kind of like grumpy all the time. Like he's just kind of like brooding. Just he can't be bothered to interact with people. Yeah, I thought that was great.
But then put some layers there or something.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know. That's just me.
Okay, I'm prejudiced because Bill Sage saw me naked once. I'm
Is
just
he a
saying.
big dude? Is he a big dude?
Okay, Seth.
Let me tell the story. I was doing a film, and he thought that his not shed. We were in like the Catskills, and we were at an inn, and he thought his compartment, which was his compartment, but it was my compartment, and I was sprawled out on the bed watching like VH1 or something behind the music, and he came in and he was like, oh, and I was like, hey, Bill. And then the next morning he said, I'm sorry, I barged in on you. You were all like, Burt Reynolds ran out in your bed. This is what he actually said. So I know him.
You almost know him in the biblical sense.
I know him, and I know him before. I think he's married now. I knew him when he was single. I won't go into any stories about that, but he's a Hal Hartley guy. Mm-hmm. For those who know Hal Hartley, and my friend Tanya Perez, who some of you know, did a movie with Bill and Hal Hartley, and he's got a style thing going. And even when he worked on this movie that I was in, being the boy with tan khakis. That was my name. He was always talking about Hal Hartley. Well, Hal would do this like this. Well, Hal would do it like that. And I think that's kind of, what would you say? Refinished him like a piece of wood.
Stamp.
His what?
Bill Sage has a stamp.
He has a stamp. And it's Hal Hartley's stamp, I think. He's also a purchase guy, I think.
Is he?
I think he's a purchase guy. I think
Yeah,
he's
he
SUNY
looks
Purchase.
it. I went to SUNY Purchase. They would just
So
buy it.
his shtick is based off, like his thing is he's, you know, fully in the cult of whatever acting paradigm he was.
He's an actor. You know, I was with him and Brooke Smith, who, for those of you who don't know Brooke Smith, she's in Vanya on 42nd Street, but she works all the time, but she's mostly known as the heavyset girl in The Pit in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, I know her. She does work all the time.
So it was her, it was Bill Sage and Brooke Smith and me acting around them, like raking up leaves and like fixing the pool table. And I was up there for a week. So I really got to watch them work. And I don't think he'll remember me. He met me in a health food store later and he didn't seem to remember me. But he gave me a note, because when you're a young actor, you're like, when I look up, do I go like this or do I go like this? And he was like, do whatever you want. Just, they're not going to direct you. Do whatever you want. And so he's an acting guy. And in defense of what he's doing, I think that there's enough levels in the other characters, the doctors, the girls, and the victims, that it's okay for him to be hyper withdrawn. Because if you look at that character in other films, right? I mean, you'd see like almost like I think he's going away from the cliche of being well-spoken, of being like puritanical, of being almost like a preacher.
Oh, I see what you're saying. He's not,
have you read your
Bible? Yeah.
This Brando minimalism. And I liked it.
Especially with the way that the film was shot at the low light, the way that they're, even in day shots, it's a dark, but not a super dark film. It's just a little low light, low, kind of almost like a low energy type of, like, I don't know how to put it. I don't even know what's giving it that effect. I'd have to go back and see it again.
They really turned down the color and they leveled off the colors.
Yeah, they leveled off the colors. Yeah, so there's a coolness and a softness.
It's like a gray.
Yeah, exactly. And I think him just doing just enough was perfect for the overall vibe, and the music was fantastic too. You know,
the music was good. Yeah, I did notice that because they had like 3 different themes, and and they really complemented stuff well, because as Judy was saying before, there is not a lot of dialogue, a lot of sweeping shots, and they can get kind of boring. So the music helps there because it kind of just denotes in what this image means. But even in the European Spanish version, which I watched like the first 20 minutes of, and I'm like,
oh, you did? Because Isaac did too.
Yeah, I
watched about the first 20 minutes of it.
Yeah, and then because I'm like, Judy did not. This is not what Judy meant. And then there's an American version, which. So I got that. But even in the European one, there wasn't any. It was just sweeping shots, and I just don't. I mean, when the Europeans
it's Mexican, right? It's not European. It's Mexican.
It was Spanish.
No, it's not Spanish. It's Mexican.
It's Mexican.
Yeah.
Well, they had like a European style, whatever else. Because I just wasn't into it. Well, it's just like, hold, panning. It's just I'm not into that. But the American version had that as well.
Yeah.
But the music did help, and also even what like Hitchcock would do when he would have his insert shots, he would give some sort of like camera movement or composition to it instead of just having inserts, and that was one of the things he developed, and that's what this film kind of seemed like. It's like they just planned out the shots for this type of music, and they were supposed to communicate X, and I think they did it well, just because on the actions because there is not a lot of talking. So if you don't have a lot of talking, you need more action. And they just had a lot of actions here too when they find the MacGuffin of the bone. And I kind of like that as a B story because it was a good motor
Yeah.
for the family. But in the Mexican version, they switched all the genders. The person who dies in the beginning was the father, then the mom is the head of the family, and all that.
I'm gonna go back and watch it. That just on the strength.
Yeah,
of
me
the film.
too.
Yeah, I was
watch it too,
I was
why not?
thinking about it, but I think I'm gonna kind of stuck. Like
You
keep
can
it
just
there.
we'll just tell you what it was like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
We'll give you the Sean run. We'll give you the Sean rundown. What Sean would have thought if he sat through this?
It's a trilogy, right?
Well,
The
it's,
Mexican-
Is it?
I think the Mexican one was a sequel to something else, and that I don't know. And then there's going to be a third one, or I guess the sequel to the American one that they've been working on and talking about. But I don't know when that's going to be because it's been 8 years since that it was released. But I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't
Sorry,
think
go
this movie made enough money to have a sequel.
No.
It doesn't.
I know, but
There's
it's
no
probably got a-
stars in this movie.
But it's got sort of a cult following now.
Right.
I mean, and it's, it's got, yeah, I think it's going to have a growing fan base. I think this movie has some kind of staying power to it. I don't know what it is, but
And it
Judy-
depend.
all right, yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead,
going to
Sean.
say it depends on the other people in the movie too, because Wyatt Russell, who played the sheriff, he's kind of a name now. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
and those two
Yeah, he's fantastic.
daughters,
And those
yeah.
two girls are famous now.
Even
And-
the girl with the curly hair, she's been in
think
like the younger
Yeah, it's
daughter.
awesome.
Yeah,
The
she's
Good
been in a hundred
Doctor-
things.
The Good Doctor seemed like he was familiar to me, but
Yeah, he looked like he was the guy from Hellraiser to me.
I don't
He
know.
was great.
He was really good.
That
The
guy
guy who
was
played
great.
yeah,
Okay,
Wait,
wait.
the
So
guy
we have
who
to back
played
up a second
Garrett.
here. We have
Back
to,
up.
We have to go. We'll go back to this, but I want Judy to tell us what the hell happened in this movie and how does she feel about it?
In terms of what? In terms
The
of
plot,
storyline?
a little bit of the
The
storyline
plot?
for the.
Well,
for
it starts off with the passing of the matriarch, the mother. There's clearly they set up the tone. They take a long time to show you the family instead of telling you. So clearly the mother was the driver of the family and the workings, the inner workings of the family. They keep referencing the diary of their ancestor, who I forget what year it was, maybe the 1700s.
It was the 1700s,
it
yeah.
was like
Yeah,
1762.
1760s or something like that, when people were first coming here. I did have an issue with that. So there's like a few issues. The girl who plays, I think, Alice Parker back in the 1760s,
Yes.
she just looked so modern
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
eyes. I
She
don't
had
know what it
layers,
is about
yeah.
her. It wasn't about her acting at all, or maybe it was the acting. I'm not sure, but the other
I remember
casting that
feeling the same way.
the other casting that they did, I was like, oh, okay, that totally works. But there was something about her that just looked so modern. It kept taking me out of the time. And I don't know if it was just like she didn't match them, or I don't know. I just kept thinking she just looks like a model or something. Like she was just like this beautiful woman. then.
Also some aspect of the way they were shooting those, what do you call that when
The
you're going-
flashbacks.
flashbacks.
Yeah.
It wasn't distinct enough from the rest of the film.
Yes. That's a
So
good point.
it would take me, I wouldn't immediately recognize. It would take usually like a few 10, 15 seconds into it to be, it's
Mhm.
it's the flashback guys. Okay.
True.
It wasn't that wasn't quite masterful on the part of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the beginning, I remember the first shot when they went to the flashback because I was watching it. I'm like, oh, cool, because I love historical stuff.
Yeah.
And I love it, and it was historically accurate. But I saw it, and then you had the woman that you didn't like, Alice Parker. She was in red, but everything else was black and white around her. And that was the beginning of the flashbacks. Yeah, but when they did like go into the flashbacks, it was shot too similarly to the modern
Mhm.
ones, and yeah, it was kind of rough.
Mm.
But yeah, I did like those flashbacks, and that the serious one in the cave, that was in the midpoint, and that was another reason about like horror films. It's like it has a lot of ingredients and a lot of rules. Like rom-coms don't, right? But if you know what I'm saying by ingredients and rules and elements and just how you play them, and one of them is the gore. And if you have gore and separate it from violence, you get more bang for your buck. I think because gore and violence are too closely associated. But if you just have gore in a non-violent way, it hits you different. And it was just kind of cool how they had that at the midpoint.
Are you talking about the strung up
scene.
female
Right,
victim
yeah. And you
where
saw
the girl is obligated to
yeah,
do the
the
deed?
father hands the knife over
Hands
the
the knife to
girl,
her,
she
she has
takes
to,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
well, I
some
think
reason.
it takes this whole element of family secrets to a whole nother level. And it takes the question into like, what is okay and what is not okay? You know, because I kept thinking like, oh, well, clearly I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it, right? Like I wouldn't. So now we're getting into the spoilers. Like I wouldn't kill someone to keep a family tradition and make them for dinner. Like I would say no. But then I thought, but what if I grew up and that's what we did? Right? Like, which goes to the premise of the whole movie. Like, we are what we are. Like, if that's how I grew up, would I feel differently? So for me, that's the question that I was left with is like,
Okay.
well, I would say I wouldn't do it. But
So
They had
now,
a religion.
you've raised a question in me.
Yeah.
So number one, like about the actual, like what happened,
Mhm.
not necessarily completely clear to me. My impression was that some family from the 1700s ended up in a very harsh state of nature, and they
Mhm.
were having trouble trapping proper food. They found humans or a human, and they fed off of that human for a while. And then they developed some kind of a weird, like, imbalance that was a curse from God, but also like literally a sickness that they had to eat human flesh, or if they didn't, they would get sick. And that
Yeah.
got passed down for generations. And that's the reason why they do it. So they have a religious, ritualistic component to it, which is how they understand why they're in that situation. But it doesn't negate the fact that they are actually physically dependent on human flesh, or else they get sick and die. Now, I could be completely off about that, but that was what I thought was going on. Is that
I think
anybody else
that-
get that impression?
I think that their point of view is so strong that they do get sick, but I think that's their belief that it's like backed up by science
and it's psychosomatic.
and it's
I don't think they need to
psychosomatic.
eat it.
What?
I don't think they need to continue. I didn't get the impression that they needed to physically eat it. I got the impression that it was almost like the psychological, like, this is what we do. What's going to happen if we don't do it?
Yeah.
Like,
So I think
like this is like their life is like this gift. Like they're tied to this. It's like an ancestral
Yeah.
curse almost.
okay. So then, at the very least, I know that they believed, or at least some of them were operating under the delusion that if
Mhm.
they didn't continue this, they would die. God would wipe them out.
Yeah.
So
I think that I think that's the religious component.
and the
well,
girls
because-
believed it, and yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it
the
was like a
boy
way
didn't.
how
So
to
we can't like I feel like you can't emphasize enough the fact that this is like a family cult tradition that they really believe that they have no choice. They really believe that they're doing the right thing
Especially the father.
maybe especially the father.
Yeah.
Until
I think
maybe the
it's-
girls start to have doubts.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going. So they show three separate ages, right? So there's the boy who is maybe 8, right?
Oh, and if
And
it's
then
not
there's the-
abundantly clear by now, these people, they kill human beings and eat them. I know
They're
And eat them
cannibals.
once a
they're
year.
cannibals.
Yeah,
Only
once
once
a
a year.
It's on a date, I believe. And so it's like it's a ritual. They fast for like 3 days because the film only takes place in about 3 days, right? So they have to start fasting. So like they really show that with the young boy where he doesn't know what's going on. He just thinks that there's a
Says,
monster
"I'm
in the
hungry."
basement. He doesn't know that they're eating people yet, right? And because he keeps talking about, did you kill the monster, right? So he's hungry. He just wants his pop snaps or whatever he keeps talking about, and his sister sneaks it to him. So I feel like when they're 0 to 10 in this movie, they don't really know what's going on. The girls are like preteens, they're adolescents and puberty, and they're starting to now they've got catapulted into their mother's shoes, where maybe they sort of knew what was going on, but because there's no moment of them reading it and going like, oh my God, like they're just like, yes, we know.
They kind of know,
but
yeah.
they don't have to. They've never had to kill someone or actually create the meal before until this time.
And you have one of
Maybe
the
wouldn't have
sisters
happened.
is approximately, they're actually referred to her age. The younger one, they refer to as 14.
Okay.
And the older one it's implied that she's a recent high school graduate.
Yeah.
So like 18.
18 to 20,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range is what the implication is. Because one of
Yeah.
the boys from school just got recruited as a
Mhm.
police officer.
Yeah.
And they kind of have the hots for each other. So
Yeah.
there's that in there
So-
too.
Yeah,
So,
so the
like,
film I
yeah.
thought showed the difference of the ages where like when they come to age, they have to take on this family legacy, could you say?
Yeah, it's a
And
rite
at
of
that
passage
point-
ritual.
Yeah, at that point, the girls are both like, oh, I don't know. I don't think I could do this. I don't want to do this. But then the adults are fully committed. And when they show the father in prayer about to, when you go to the end and he's going to kill his family because I think he knows they're going to be found out, you know? So he's like, I've done my part. I've held my thing. God, take me now. Right? Like
Yeah,
he is
those
fully
family
committed.
annihilators.
In the third act, there's this.
The third
In the final act, there's this.
Oh.
basically
That's another
this
thing I have.
resolution to commit suicide, and he puts the
Homicide.
What is it?
suicide,
Homicide. Yeah.
Arsenic.
Arsenic. Yeah, he puts
Yeah, can
arsenic
I-
in the gruel, the meat, the human flesh soup that they're eating. One of the girls catches wind of it and thwarts his plot at the very last moment by smacking the bowl out of the little boy's hands onto the ground before he can finish it, and then
And that's when
all
the
hell
doctor
breaks
shows up.
loose. And then the family doctor shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The family doctor's a really interesting character. I just want to say this in terms of the construction of the script, as well as it's brilliant acting. They give you this guy who basically serves as like the detective in this story. Like
Because
he's the guy.
let me just interrupt. A lot of
Yeah.
horror films, they need an investigation, but it doesn't have to be by the main character. And so in this film, it was done by a supporting character, which is why it hits one of the ingredients I was saying before. Thank you, Seth.
No problem. But what's interesting about the investigator in this is he's a single father of a daughter who's disappeared, and we find out she's been a victim
Of this family.
of this family.
And which is
And
why
he's
And
a
he
doctor.
slowly starts to figure that out too.
Yeah, he's this very
Because the reason he starts, let's just explain.
Yeah.
The reason he starts to figure out that something's fishy with the Parker family, or what are their names?
Parker family.
Something's fishy with the Parker family. He starts to realize this because he's looking at the autopsy of the mother who died in a very weird way, and it's not clear in the beginning how. And he's making the connection that there's a certain kind of there are certain kinds of problems. There are certain types of muscles that are atrophying, and certain types of other markers that are consistent with only one thing, which is a sort of degenerative disease that was found in cannibalistic populations in places like Papua New Guinea. So he starts saying, okay, maybe this woman died of that. And now he starts to notice the father's a little weird, and he starts to see certain kinds of tremors that are consistent with the same weird, rare disease that only cannibals get. And I don't even know if this is scientifically accurate or not.
I
but
think this is accurate.
It could be, yeah.
kind of.
I
When
can
he
imagine
basically
that
has-
bad things might happen to you if you have a
Right.
feed on a
Yeah.
diet
And
of
he
humans.
has the bone that his dog found.
Yeah, and
Well,
he starts finding
yeah.
bones washing up, and there's just this perfect storm of a convergence of circumstances that I feel was very well timed in this film. It wasn't. It was really well timed, and that's not easy to do as a writer. And it gives just enough information to the character, and just enough information to the audience as it builds. And hey, who's
Hi,
that?
Shane's
that?
here.
Jane,
Now-
Jane.
Shane doesn't know it, but Shane, can you say something about Obscuria Films? Obscuria Films is our podcast. Just say Obscuria Films, Obscuria Films. Yeah.
Experiment films, experiment films.
All right,
cool.
bye.
I gave him Star Wars cards.
He's got to go
Hey,
because we can't have
Shane.
kids on YouTube.
Oh, we can't.
Not
Shane,
in- not
Sean
in
gave
videos.
you his Star Wars.
I
It
gave
card.
him
doesn't
Star
matter
Wars
yet,
cards.
but when we blow up and we have 50,000 followers.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing too I wanted to mention is that because this was the second time that I watched the film, they do leave little clues. Like the doctor's daughter's clip is referenced like at least 3 times in a photo on the daughter that you would never ever know watching the film the first time. You would never ever know it. But when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, they placed that there. Now they're
Judy,
gonna
not
call
to-
it back multiple
Not to
times.
toot my own horn, but I noticed and I thought it
Oh,
was
you did?
very
Okay.
clever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a very pattern oriented person. So
Yeah.
if I see something that the camera seems to like for some reason, I'm
Mhm.
like, I got to remember that for later.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I
saw that.
did. Yeah.
It was a very strange looking brooch.
Well, typically in good films, there you don't waste any moments. There's no moments so everything is there for a reason.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Um,
What
and
here's
then they finalize it when at the end, and I loved this moment. It was it was so messed up and so brilliant at the same time that I was like chuckling.
Well,
But
when the girls
after
start
they
feeding on him,
after they feed on their father, right? And the younger daughter walks over to the doctor who's been shot, and he's like, "What? I don't know what's going on." And she like looks down, a piece of the father's skin like drops on her hand, and I thought, oh, she'll pick it up and like flick it off, but she picks it up and looks at the doctor and like eats it in front of him. And then she takes his daughter's hair clip and puts it on him and says nothing, and
Yeah,
just
it's
walks
chilling.
away.
It's
Like-
It's
chilling.
just like so messed up and brilliant that I loved it. I was just like,
it was the best. It was one of the greatest climaxes I've ever seen. I would have to say it's almost one of the greatest climaxes of all time because it's so fucked up, but
Yeah.
so weird and funny at the same time.
yes,
It's just like hilarious. They eat him to death, and of all
Mhm.
places, they're just feeding on his arms, like
like a zombie movie.
a
Yeah.
zombie,
And
just
his neck,
feeding on
yeah.
his arms and his neck. Oh yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
they're basically eating him to death, killing him slowly.
Yeah. And there's another moment too with the older daughter, where because she like starts to eat him too. And I thought like, oh, they'll just bite him. But then like I was like, oh no, they're like all in, right?
It was
And
like
then there's
3
this
minutes.
moment where she like flips her hair back and then like goes in again. And it was just again, another acting moment where there's no dialogue, but just like the subtlety of just like the hair. It was like so animalistic.
It almost
Where
felt like
they were almost in like a trance.
yeah, they were in it. It was like they were in a trance, doing exactly what they knew they were supposed to do, and it
Yeah.
felt like they were completing some sort of a ritual circle that has
Yeah.
been lasting for the last 250 years.
You know,
That circle is now complete with this strange ritual slaughter of their father.
you know what it
That was
reminds me of?
amazing.
It reminds me of zombie movies where the zombies finally like eat the guy who you're like, when are they gonna eat this guy? Like in Day of the Dead, there's this a-hole commander who's running the zombie experiment, and you're like, when are they gonna tear him to pieces?
Well,
But
that's
it
what
also-
it feels like.
Yeah, and it
It feels
also
like
reminds
the
me of the
perfect
end.
justice in some weird way. Like there
Island
wouldn't
of
have been any
Lost
other better
Souls.
way to kill them. Kill him.
Island of Lost Souls was one of my favorite movies. When Dr. Moreau, like his law doesn't work anymore, and they're like, they're like, you killed, no more law, and they all like eat Dr. Moreau, and he's like using his whip, and then you're like, that whip's not gonna work when they get closer to you, and then they put him in the House of Pain,
Yeah.
where they kill him, where they were made into. It's like this beautiful tradition almost of like, this is how we're gonna end it.
It's
The other
almost like
thing- yeah, I just want to add one more
Yeah,
thing with the
go.
father scene. Okay, so there's always like you create empathy for the characters, and you could sort of have some empathy for the father, where like he lost his wife, he clearly has no idea how to raise children. He doesn't know what he's doing, and so you could sort of like feel for him. But then the moment when he kills the like deputy or sheriff, the boy, when he's on top of his daughter, I felt for me that's when like you're like, okay, you can kill him now. Like it puts him in a different perspective of like, okay, well, he was just doing the family tradition, like he was just, like following God's orders. But for me, the moment he did that, it was like, oh, this is a whole new thing. And then they took it a step further. Then he's going to go after the doctor. Then he kills the neighbor.
that was
So it's
the
like
moment where he crossed the line with the
Yes.
girl. That's the moment where he'd already violated his daughter before that. In a sense, I mean, just the whole
Wait,
thing
in what
is
sense?
well. Wait, she was put in a position where she had to slaughter that
Yeah.
happened before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
I mean,
the
like,
father made the
he didn't
older
guide
daughter,
her, he didn't show her, he didn't do it. Like,
like, you got to do it. That's it.
it's like they had already had their first like post mother dying trauma. The big one was
Yeah.
the scene with the monster in the basement.
Yeah.
And they had no guidance with that whatsoever. And they stepped up and did it. And he wasn't there explaining anything or doing anything. And then he hacks her boyfriend apart while he's, you know, inside of
They're in
her
the
on
only sex scene, which is another element for horror films, by the
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the
Can't
best.
have sex.
That is that you cannot have sex in a horror movie. And I
I
was
just think it
watching
was
it.
weird.
And did they
That
get
sex
you?
scene.
Did they get you? Because they got me. I didn't expect that. Like he
No,
was
that
gonna
was
like.
that was a moment I even when I rewatched it, I totally forgot about it.
I kind of expected it because
it's hard
because
to
while they
forget.
were going when they were going to the spot, Wyatt Russell thinks he hears the sound and he turns back and he sees that it's nothing, and then they continue on, meaning they're being followed. But even
I just
that
love
sex
the
scene.
balls on this filmmaker, because you gotta have the balls to be like, I'm making a great film, but I'm gonna put a Jason moment in it. You know,
Well,
I'm
you
gonna
need
put a
one.
moment.
You need one. But I just think it's so weird because that sex scene was
But
weird
that's
because
exactly
they-
how his dad. That's exactly how that father would kill
Yeah.
the boyfriend. You know, it's like perfectly appropriate. It's the most extreme possible moment, and it also shows like some of that weird reverse Oedipal, like Electra complex possible thing where the father has a certain affection for his daughters that can't really be differentiated from other kinds of affection, because he's like, I mean, there's one
Yeah.
scene where he's like kissing her on the mouth, which is not inherently like mean anything, but I think they did it on purpose to show that this guy has no fucking boundaries at all,
Yeah.
like with his children. Like, I mean, talk about no boundaries. Like you make them kill and cannibalize other people. You can't even do the slaughter and cannibalization.
Yeah.
You can't even do it
Well, for-
yourself.
Yeah,
I
for
thought that
me,
was
it because they don't show much with the mother in it. But for me, I just then stepped in with my own interpretation of, well, he probably just did nothing with the children. And like he's just the scary daddy, and like the mom did everything.
Yeah, it's weird because in the movie, his job was a watchmaker slash watch fix it, Mr. Fix It guy,
And he's
And
a
that-
landlord,
and a
slum-
landlord. But that's because the father in the Spanish movie fixed watches. But this guy doesn't fix watches. Why didn't they just make him a farmer or something? Or like a carpenter or like whatever else.
I think if
because
you
he
make,
always has the trimmer in the whole movie. He
I
doesn't
think if
even
you make
fix
him a
that.
farmer, you're saying something about the land and where they get food. I think it's more effective. To
Yeah,
have his
he couldn't be a-
profession.
Carpenter.
Yeah, you're
or
right. He
something.
couldn't be a farmer. But
Doesn't
you,
fix
but
watches.
I agree
An
with you,
auto
Sean.
mechanic?
I agree with you, Sean.
All right.
There's no reason why there's no
watches.
reason why they couldn't have given him a more plausible, believable.
Yeah, something.
Profession.
He's just
That-
in the
that wouldn't have
cat-
taken
I didn't
away
realize
from
much.
it. I didn't even remember that he's. All I
Yeah,
remember is that
exactly. They had
he
one scene.
tinkers in his shack with stuff, but mostly
Yeah.
it's stuff related to his weird obsession.
Yeah, no, my question with that too, when he was in his watch scene and there's a moment where they pan up and you see like braids, like hair braids. And then I was thinking, are these watches from like the other people? Like, are they all girls? Like, is
I
that
think
fair?
I think
don't
they are. I think they're from the generations before.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. It was just a question that I had of like, that they didn't really answer.
Do they
Um,
only eat women?
No.
Seemed like it's women, yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
Well,
but when they do a flashback, they imply that the father figure of Alice Parker killed that other guy. So they show them going off, and then they come back, and the dad's like, "Oh, he didn't make it." You know, she says, but he's got fresh meat. So that to me was like, oh, he killed. I forget the
Yeah,
guy's
I
name.
guess, but it wasn't a lot of fresh meat though.
No.
But yeah, he does show up with like the fresh. with the
Did
fresh-
he and did they mix the boyfriend into the stew, or did the father spare his
No, he
daughter that
buried him.
much?
He buried
Okay.
him. They show him digging the hole.
Let me just get back to that sex scene because it's strange because the blonde girl and the blonde guy, they peck on the lips once.
Mm-hmm.
and then she's taking off her shirt and getting down in the dirt. I was like, wait, what? Because you went from barely first base, not even first base, to home run. And you skipped all the bases. I mean, there wasn't even heavy petting or anything. It was just kind of weird because I was watching it with Sarah, and I'm like, "Wait, are we going? Is this a home run already?" And
Sometimes
she's like, "Yeah."
when you have enough tension in a relationship, because you're a blonde 18-year-old girl who murders women and eats them, or you're a cop who's finding all these human bones. Maybe there's so much tension.
Yeah,
Hey, just skip the foreplay. Sometimes you can just skip the foreplay.
I guess I just thought it was this.
I don't
like,
know.
The
I
weirdest
found
thing.
it plausible.
It's
I
either
get- I
that.
get-
People sometimes have enough tension. They just tear each other's clothes
Is
off.
this also the first time that they're having sex? They don't really say yes or no.
I think it is.
I thought it was pretty clearly that's what was going.
I think it was the
my
first
impression
time
was
she
just the
had
first-
sex.
Yeah, my impression
Yeah.
was the first time she's ever had sex. So she's like,
Yeah,
But him, I
that's
don't
my
know.
impression. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah.
I got my notion was that she was a virgin.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's obviously
had
not explicit.
They had at least kissed before.
Yeah, okay, I have a question. Arsenic. What are the uses of arsenic? Anybody?
I think it's medicinal in very, very, very small.
Okay.
In small doses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Judy?
I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, it's for hardening metals like bullets and shotgun pellets for shotgun shells.
Okay.
Why is it in a kitchen?
Because you use it to kill rats, dude. I think it's in rat poison.
All right. That was my only question. 'Cause
I
it
mean,
was like
arsenic-
coriander, cinnamon, arsenic. I'm like,
Arsenic and
whoa.
Old Lace. In the play Arsenic and Old Lace, it's about these old ladies who like make you tea and they put the arsenic in the tea. It's right.
Great, but yeah, great. But why arsenic?
Yeah, it's
All
also
right.
in a very old bottle that's handwritten. That's something else I noticed. It wasn't,
Hmm.
so I don't know if it's part of,
Okay, here's another.
I don't
Okay,
know.
I just want because that kind of threw me. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Like, how steampunk are these people? Because that's another thing. It was
Yeah.
kind of steampunky, which I kind of dig. But my next question is: so Wyatt Russell. Wait, so the doctor finds a bone, gives it to Wyatt Russell. Wyatt Russell's like, okay, I'm going to help you out. I'm a rookie. Going to make my bones, so to speak. So they go down to the creek, because there was a big rainfall. And bones are washing up because maybe it was like the boneyard or whatever, and they're washing and they're investigating. And then he finds all this whole time he finds one tooth. And when he finds that one tooth, he sees the older daughter, and then and they have a scene. Oh, let me change your wet socks. I got my daddy's dry socks. And Wyatt Russell says fine, and then he finds a tooth. Okay, so then the sex scene happens that we spoke of, and then he dies. But then later on, the daughters are kind of upset, and the father, Bill Sage, like goes off and he trips and he falls into the creek.
Mhm.
Remember that part. And then downstream, it's bone, and he's flipping out. He's trying to make a pile of bones. He finds a jaw. He finds a mandibula, whatever it's called, like on the thing.
Mandible.
Mandible. Thank you. On the thing. So I'm thinking if it took Wyatt Russell like a whole day to find one tooth, Bill Sage is finding all the 17 bones.
That's this thing
Decades.
happening. It's the spiritual, religious element of the
Yeah, I got no problem with that because it's
All right.
where it is in the
Yeah.
movie.
It's all found under a tree. So my thing was, when did that tree fall? Because, if it's sitting in water, it could have fallen more recent than. So I sort of, I bought it. It didn't.
Okay,
I
that
did
was
think
my
in
thing.
my mind, I did think it was a little weird. Like, how come they didn't find any more bones than that? Like, why would they freak out over like one little finger bone?
Well, what was this major natural disaster that was going on throughout the whole movie?
I think it was just a rainstorm. Wasn't
was
even
just
a
rain.
hurricane.
So you had a
It was a
flood.
thunderstorm.
That was the perfect. It was like you had a flood, and I'm saying the script guys, the script doctors are sitting around talking about this. They would be saying, well, yeah, you had a flood, and the flood's going on the whole movie, or the rain's going on the whole movie. The flood's just getting worse and worse and worse. Start to see some bones. That's strange. And then there's this massive, the critical scene. The guy who killed all these people, now he has to get flood. He's getting flooded with all the bones, and It sort of it works.
And it's biblical too, because
It
the
has a
flood
biblical-
thing. I get it. All right, I was just thought that was very strange. And the neighbor Marge, that was Kelly McGillis.
Yes. Top
Yep.
Gun.
Who's that? I'll tell
Top
you who
Gun.
that is. Witness, Top Gun, and The Accused. She played opposite Jodie Foster in Jodie Foster's first Academy Award. She was in The Accused, and then she kind of like fluttered away. But that was her. I was like, whoa, because I mean, her in Witness, that was pretty hot. Kidding,
Wait,
guys. God,
Witness
thank
isn't-
you, Judy, for smiling. God.
no, I don't remember Witness. Was Witness the one?
Witnesses.
She was the Amish chick.
Harrison
She played
Ford
an
among the
Amish.
Amish.
Oh, the horror. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's
Indiana
kind of
Jones
hot.
goes to help the Amish. That's
That
what
and nuns.
Witness
That's
is.
the
Amish chicks and
Witness,
nuns, super hot. And that was my joke. But no, I just thought that was cool, and I do kind of like the Catskills because it reminded me of that TV show, The Sinner, because that gets shot up in like upstate. And I
The
thought,
Sinner
yeah,
is shot. The Sinner. I know where the Sinner is shot because Alice is there.
well, no,
it's-
not season 4, but like season 3.
Okay,
stuff,
all right.
You know, yeah, but no, yeah, maybe that. But it was like
She's
I
in
just
Nova
like that.
Scotia now.
Yeah.
She's what?
She's in Nova Scotia now.
Oh yeah, Nova Scotia. Yeah, I just kind of like that that rain and that look.
Mhm.
And yeah, I got it was just like in the end scene because it was like so Sarah's watching it with me now at this point, and she sees something coming up, and she's going to close her eyes because she doesn't even like The Walking Dead. So she closes her eyes, and then the girls eat the father. But it lasted 3 minutes, and it wouldn't stop. And the budget that they used on that dummy to make whatever they made, it was like a gummy flesh thing.
Was it
It
that
was
or was
good.
it CGI?
No, that
It
was
looked
real.
Real.
That wasn't the CGI would have been too expensive.
The
It would just
CGI
been
was when he
cheaper.
hit the guy with the shovel, though. That was good CGI.
Probably, yeah, because it was
Yeah.
all shot
Yeah.
digital. But that was some real stuff. I don't know what they did, but some film dork figured it out, and he or she did an excellent job because it lasted for 3 minutes, and even during the sequence, the camera was pulling back, and I'm like, okay, we're pulling back. That means we're out of it. I'm like, all right, sweetie, it's over. And then the music happens again. And, I'm like, "Ugh!" And then I'm looking at it now and it's still going on. I was like that for 3 minutes. Which is kind of
Meanwhile, I'm watching it going, I wonder what the guys are gonna think of me now for like recommending.
it
this
was-
film.
I
Like,
loved it. I
It was
called
a
Isaac.
long time.
I think it's amazing.
I called
was a
Isaac
long
and I was like, "Did you see the movie yet?" And then he saw it and he's like, "Wow, Judy picked a winner. That movie." And we just talked about because we wanted to talk about it like we're talking about it now.
Yeah.
Can I tell you,
For favorite-
Judy, if I had met you when we were in high school, I would have tried to date you. I would have brought you home to my dad. I'll tell you why. Because you know what my dad used to do every time? It wasn't just with girls that I brought back, but with friends in general. If anytime my friends were at the dinner table for the first time with Joel Kaplan, my dad would ask them, "So, Judy, let me ask you something. How do you feel about cannibalism?" That was his line. So,
You're kidding.
and you would have
The perfect movie for Isaac.
You would have
This is
passed
the perfect
test.
movie for Isaac, and I've
My
met
dad's
Isaac's
been
dad.
talking about cannibalism since
Why
I
is
was
he
a child.
talking about cannibalism so much?
Because
To
he
get
likes to
a-
fuck with people.
No, to
Oh,
see how the
okay.
other person
Like, what do you think
reacts.
about cannibalism,
What do you,
Judy?
and see how they react.
And you would have passed the test. You would have said something like, you probably would have said something clever and like, I don't know. It just
I would have
depends
said
on- depends on
something
what
like,
kind of-
well, if it was between dying or eating somebody, I'd have to consider which body part to start with.
Yes,
the
exactly.
left butt
It's a
cheek.
very reasonable answer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
on the strength of that answer alone, I probably would have, fallen head over heels.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah,
I did want to make
cannibalism.
one comment. I read, I was reading people's reviews to try to find people who hated the movie. And
Right.
so there was the comments of, oh, it's too slow. But I thought one stood out was where someone said, and I forget where this was, it might have been on Rotten Tomatoes. They said that the movie was one joke away from the entire tone changing, or like one.
That's
big
what I love about this
That's
movie.
what makes it so good.
Yeah.
They were
And I was
able to.
like, they do have a point there. It's like one little weird sarcastic, like anything to change would change the whole thing in a way.
That's why, in a way, I find the most impressive thing about this entire film to be the acting. And I
Yeah.
know Seth thinks I'm not a
Yes.
character guy. I am. Very much so.
But if you had to choose between eating structure and eating character, you would eat the structure.
No,
No?
honestly, at the end of
I
the
need the
day,
character.
I'm more of a character guy. I'm just a little bit less, I'm a little bit more dubious about process to
Okay.
develop character.
I think it's
Because
I
I'm
think-
not an acting coach.
Well,
Yeah.
if I may, the Russian formalists already discussed this, and they called it the Suje and the Fubella. Now, one I forget which one's which, but one of them is the series events of the narrative, and the other one is how that narrative is told. So you could say, is the character feeding the context or the structure in this movie, or is the structure of it feeding the character? If you want to
Both.
get
They're both doing it. That's what's great. And the other thing is that,
Character
you know what?
structure.
It's not just the dad who's a little bit of a minimalist. They all are. And what
Mhm.
Judy's talking about, the criticism that like it's one this away or one that away, one bad, it was, I wouldn't even say it's one joke away. It's like one
Yeah.
bad gesture away from cracking the confidence in the narrative. And I think the actors and possibly the director need to get the credit for making this the movie work the way it is on the strength of the acting alone. This could have been a play. You know, they could have done this in a theater. It's very subtle. The lines are very sparse. There's not a ton of dialogue. Every little emotion and every little intonation and facial gesture matters. All movement looks bigger on film. And so the amount of restraint that they needed to keep the gestures at an even much lower than you would typically find in a movie must have been a lot of, no, you're moving too much. No, don't, less with the eyes. Like I saw a lot of that. I don't know, maybe Seth, you can give me your 2 cents on that because you know
I
more.
don't know. I think I don't know, but I would imagine that this movie was rehearsed. I don't think that this movie didn't have at least 2 weeks in some rented space where the director directed.
Yeah, because it was shot in digital, and I don't foresee a long shooting time. They probably shot in 21 days. Probably.
So I think that this guy rehearsed. I don't know. I could find out because I know Nat DeWolf, who's in the movie.
I'd like to find out what their process was for making this film.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to find out what their actual budget was because we don't know.
Yeah, that
When
would be
we
kind
find
of
out,
cool.
can we leave that in the comments for people
Yeah.
who are watching?
Yeah, I'll write an
thinking about it?
email to Nat and then we can type it maybe into
Yeah.
the comments.
Make
Or
it
in the
into a
maybe in the
promo.
notes under the
We
video.
can pin a comment to the video,
Okay.
which will be the first top comment that everybody sees when they look
Yeah.
at the comments.
And I could edit a promo for the video with that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all
and
of the acting.
One other criticism
go
that is
for it,
so
Judy.
silly, but when on Amazon Prime, I don't know if this is an Amazon Prime thing or the filmmakers, they show this beautiful picture of the family at the table with the plates, and then they have this awful font that makes it look like a different. It doesn't match for me. It doesn't match the tone of the movie. It makes it look like a cheesy horror film. I would have to send it to you, but it really bothered me. I was like, oh, they're making it look like a bad horror film by using that font on Amazon Prime.
That
You mean
happens with horror films, though.
the font that
It's like when
was
you
on the
use Comic
poster?
Sans and you're like, why are you using that?
Right, but this was the font that Amazon Prime had the poster image
I don't
of?
know if it was the movie that used it or Amazon who used it, because I feel like I didn't
Yeah.
remember it from the film. I'd have to find it.
They usually have different posters, and
Yes.
so it was probably one of them that just wasn't.
It could be the distributor because sometimes when you get distribution, you just give it all over. Like I have a film that looks like it's a horror movie, but it's a romantic comedy because the distributor was like, "This is how we'll distribute it."
Yeah.
And there's like a knife in the poster, and it's a love story. I don't get it, but
I do. Kidding.
I know. I'm trying to find it.
No, it's because these daughters are pretty cool. Because that Julia Garner
Was
Yeah,
it like some?
This is what I think of. You can see it. Right?
That's the
that
one.
Looks fine. But then when I saw it online, they used this like weird, like the bloody. It looks like bloody letters.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something you'd see on like an '80s slasher flick. And it just, I don't know. For me, it bothered me. I was like,
Wait, you're talking about the thumbnails on Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I zoned out.
They were like
gothic.
They were gothic looking or something.
They got some dude. They got some intern.
Oh, I found it. There's two, and they're both bad.
Okay.
Can
Yes, that I don't like it.
Both of them are bad, and they're both quite different.
Yeah, I don't like them at all.
It's like that gothic thing. I don't know.
It's not, no, it's more of the cheesy horror with the jagged,
Yeah.
bloody, and that one, it's like kind of coming in at you like Star Wars, like in the beginning of Star Wars. And then there's another one that's a little better. Actually,
Where are my lights? Okay.
I got a bigger. This is the other one, which isn't as bad.
Yeah, I don't like either of them.
No, but this
I don't
one,
know,
okay,
for me, it just because I feel like the movie is so well done when
I
you
know,
put
but
font like that.
this is even worse than the one I just
Yes.
showed.
yeah, because
That's
that
the
one
one
looks
on it.
like
Yeah,
I know what you hold on. It looks like I know what you did last summer. Fine.
Yes.
You know, like
It's just bad.
It's
It doesn't
amateurish.
match the film. And so
Yeah.
I feel like if I was a subscriber, if I was like, oh, let's find a movie to watch, I would look at that and be like, no, it's not for me.
The
I
Mexican
don't know.
one is much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I still like the simple one, just like a very solid font. We are what we are.
yeah.
Hey,
I mean, we're getting into other things.
Well,
No,
but they
yeah.
complained actually. There were critics who complained that the distributors, A24, the same guys that do the Safdie Brothers, Uncut Gems, and all those
Yeah.
kind of like weird, like offbeat type of indie things, they were the main distributors of this film, and there were a lot of complaints. I forget if it was the producers or people involved in the film that were complaining, or if it was a critic who said that like the way they distributed it completely ruined the impression of what this film was going to be for moviegoers. And then
Yeah.
like, so people were expecting like a slasher film, and it was like this
Mhm.
slow paced, like psychological thriller. And
Yes.
that like they really did the audience. It was a critic who said they really did the audience a major disservice with how they promoted and marketed this film, because the marketing images, they said even the images, they mentioned what you mentioned, and all that stuff just like gave the audience the wrong impression. And if they had just not told you anything about the movie and just said, no, it's just a kind of like a weird thriller.
Yeah.
That would have been enough.
Well,
But
this
then
is
people
also
be
the
going into
movie-
it, oh, weird thriller. Yeah, it is a weird thriller from the moment it starts.
Yeah, this is the movie when I tell people because people will ask me for a horror recommendation. They're like, well, I want to watch like a horror movie, but I don't like any of that like really bloody stuff. And so this is like the kind of movie I'd be like, oh, okay, why don't you try this film? Because it's mostly story. So I find that a lot of women will like it. It's very character based, it's very story based, and there's only a few moments. It's not like this crazy like bloodbath, you know. And so that's the recommendation that I would give to people.
and
When
there's
they're like,
not
I
that
like
many
horror, but I
jump
don't like
scares.
slash. What?
And there's not that many jump scares. I think there's only 2
Yes.
in the whole
Yeah,
thing.
there's no tricks with audio. Like I hate when they do that in the movie theater. When they it's just like they just inundate you with sound. It's like, yeah, of course I jumped because you like assaulted my ears.
Yeah, they have scientists that figured all that stuff out. But
I
yeah,
think-
I kind of dig it how there's only a couple jump scares, because you want a little bit to get your heart going, but you don't want too many, because then you're just anticipating all 17 of them. You know?
I
Yeah,
only
but that's
want
not,
one
this
or
is, it's not
two.
even the style for
Yeah,
this.
there's only 2. There's only
Yeah, I
2.
can't deal with more than 2 of those in my types of thriller horror movies. Like David Lynch, almost he does it kind of perfectly to really
does.
freak you out, and he does it in
Mulholland
ways
Drive.
that it's the Mulholland Drive with the guy behind the diner and the little cube. Is that what you're referring to, Sean?
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the most amazing ones.
It is. Yeah.
Because it's not like it's creepy, but like terrifying at the same time. And the way he does it, the way he blends sound and image and the camera work, he does it. What else does he do that really well? That's the kind of thing I like when you're. What do you call that in horror? The like
infrasound.
In what?
Infrasound is horror directors figured out if they put in sounds that the human ear cannot hear, it'll help with the jump scare because
The jump
jump
scare
scare is the term I was looking for, Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No, I'm dumb.
I was getting
Sean.
into it, baby.
I'm not a show business guys like you guys are. I'm just.
Oh yeah.
I'm
Sorry.
a dumb musician who loves movies.
Jump scare, right? Well, okay. As a musician, there are some sounds the ear
I
cannot
get it. I
hear,
understand how it works. I was just.
but the
I
body
wanted the
feels.
technical.
Okay.
Well,
I mean,
sound is a very
Bill
important
Sage
part.
was in Melrose Place.
Bill
And
Sage has
American
been in
Psycho.
everything.
Melrose Place and American Psycho and 2 Law and Order Criminal Intense, which is my favorite show. All right.
Bill Sage is a New York-based actor who works all the time.
Yeah, I'm looking at his thing. It's at least 5 things, if not 10 things, every year since
Bill
94.
Sage's agent is not an unhappy person to be collecting their
This guy,
tickets.
I'm scrolling and scrolling.
And he does
Are you on
theater.
IMDb right now?
Yes. The Catch, The Pale Door, The Price, Delinquent, AWOL, The Sphere and the Labyrinth, The Preppy Connection, White Collar, Elementary, Boardwalk Empire, Nurse
Oh
Jackie.
yeah, who did he play in
Every
Boardwalk
New York
Empire?
show, basically.
Boardwalk Empire. He played Solomon Bishop or George Bishop.
How many episodes?
4 in
Okay.
2011.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
I
dude
guess he
works a
played
lot.
twins. I guess he played twins. One was Solomon Bishop, the next one was George Bishop. But it keeps on going. Desert Saints, The Atlantis Conspiracy, Roberta. Oh my God, he was in Roberta? My screenwriting professor directed Roberta at Sundance. Wow, he was in Roberta? I don't like that screenwriting professor anyway. Yep, that's his name right there. Never mind. All right.
And Sean,
Yeah.
he saw me naked. That's
Hey, yeah, you kind of cut that story short. Like what
someone
happened?
put in the trivia under Seth Michael May a link to Bill Sage on IMDb. There should be Bill Sage saw Seth Michael May naked in the Catskills.
Yeah.
Jesus, this guy.
And he apologized for it. He didn't know it wasn't his room.
Oh,
Anyway.
no, he walked in the wrong way.
I just want to say something. As an acting coach, you can watch this film and learn film acting. Like
Yeah,
you're
I've
never
heard
watching and going, there's some acting going on here. Like it's all so. It reminds me in a way of Alien. Like that cast is so good. That you don't see
it's hard to keep a
Small
straight
cast as well.
face and it's hard to keep a straight face and be real with such a ridiculously insane premise.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Like, it's like, okay, today we're gonna eat the body, guys. Today, like, think about the scenes with the crew there, and it's like, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna
I did a film where I bit a penis off and spit it out.
Judy,
Wow.
True
Judy,
story. I
the
can
wreck.
send you the YouTube clip.
The wreck. Can we put the wreck up on Obscuria Films?
I don't even know where you could see it, to be honest. It's nowhere. It's terrible.
It's a
I'm gonna
great
find
movie.
it. I know how to find all the obscure films.
It's definitely an obscure film.
I know how to find all of them.
I had a great experience
even
filming.
I even found all of the student films of the Safdie brothers that they made when they were in college. I found those. I can find anything because I like weird
Okay.
shit.
Find
I
the
have
wreck,
the DVD
dude.
in PAL format.
That's
for the
awesome.
film,
Okay, maybe we'll do
but it
that.
didn't do very well. It was on Netflix for a very brief period of time. I didn't do it.
All right, so guys,
it
do we
didn't get
have?
well reviewed.
Oh wait, Judy, I did see Fair Game in theaters, by the way.
Oh, okay. Put it back in my head.
Because Seth
I was
mentioned
like,
that. I'm
yeah,
like, I saw that.
This John Penn, and then they're like, it's just the back of your head. But But I
you got-
pissed a lot of people off with my investigative questions as a reporter.
Oh,
My
Yeah.
parents
Good
went to
job.
the theater to see it, and they were like, "We
Wait.
didn't see your face, but other people were yelling at the screen."
wait,
I gotta go
was
back and watch that.
did Sean Penn smell of cigarettes?
No, but he,
Oh.
you know, say whatever you want about him and his personal life, but on set, he's very professional, very serious, does not want to waste any time, and was just very professional. Like he came over and shook our hands. Like I found he was very pleasant to work with. Like he wasn't like, he didn't come over and like schmooze with us before we shot. He was very much in his character, but he was just all business, you know. But he wasn't like, don't make eye contact with me. Like no one said like, oh, you can't look at him when we're not rolling, you know. Because I've been on sets where they'll say that too, like, oh, you can't like look in their direction. Don't call them by their real name. You know, like I've seen all that. And he just was all business. He was fine.
That's awesome.
Sounds like you were talking about me, Judy.
No
No.
eye contact with Mr. Behrens.
Wait,
When you
hey,
meet
call
with
me
Mr.
Captain.
Behrens,
Guys.
Captain Behrens.
All right, guys, we're coming
right.
up on an
Okay.
little hour
Yeah,
and
we're a
10
little
minutes.
over.
Let's make some closing arguments, everybody, and then I'm going to pitch the next episode.
Woo.
Okay, please watch all my promos. I edit them.
So nothing more. He has nothing more to say about this film.
Oh, about closing argument. Yeah, it is worth a watch, even if you listen to the whole
Let
film cast here. It is worth just watching again.
let me say one thing, Sean.
Yeah.
It was an enjoyable movie for you, on the whole, and you've never seen a movie like this before, right?
I mean,
I can't compare it to anything.
No, there's
there,
no movie like this movie.
There's no movie
Yeah.
like this.
no, there's one
You
that
know,
Netflix
all the
had
other
one, I think.
movies, all the other movies that we've watched, except maybe the one maybe the Romeo is Bleeding, but every single one we watched, there are other movies like it. This is like
Yeah.
a all different genre of movie. This is completely
No,
wild.
there's Netflix
So
made
it-
one called The Relic, which is kind of similar.
Okay, which one came out first, and which one's better? I
This-
don't know.
We Are What We Are
Yeah.
came out first. They were because it did. I mean, yes, it's true. The movie
Okay, I'm
does
gonna
look
make
ahead
a
of its
closing
time.
argument. This is one of those movies that people are gonna overlook for a bunch of unfortunate reasons, but many people are gonna rip this movie off someday, or could
Yeah, because
potentially.
it is ahead of its time. I mean, I will say that because 2013 was like what I guess, but it's very ahead of its time because this is the stuff that A24 is making.
Yes,
Like A24 is making stuff that looks just like this.
A24 distributed this.
No, I thought it was Entertainment One.
No, A24.
I'm pretty sure it was Entertainment.
Oh, really?
A24 might have bought it since, but
Yeah, they bought. They're
Mm.
I think they may be the current distributors of it.
okay. Well, I saw it Entertainment One in my version.
All right, I could be wrong. I will.
Because I know Entertainment One.
Yeah, Entertainment One distributed.
Oh, because I think
Wait,
they're
why
French.
did I think it was A24?
But they do because it looks like it. And Entertainment One does a lot of B movies. They do a lot of B, dumb space killer films. And this is an outlier in their, filmography. So it is very much ahead of its time. You will dig it. And Wyatt Russell, who was in Overlord, which I love. He was all right.
Seth?
I think this movie is the argument to if you're a good actor, you can do your best work in horror, or the best performances come out of horror, like Rosemary's Baby, Alien, Session 9, and what else? What else can I think of? There's just some great performances in horror, and when it's great, and this is great.
Jeffrey Toombs, Reanimator.
Jeffrey Toombs and Reanimator. I wasn't thinking that, but yeah, I mean, it's a performance. It's up there. Chuck Connors in Tourist Trap. Come on.
Oh, welcome in.
Richard Harris in Orca. Come on, these are the greatest. No, I'm
Chuck Connors was a professional baseball player. Bless his
and
heart.
NBA and He was basketball and he was baseball.
Yeah, he got
One
cut
of
after
5
a
guys.
season, but
But that's beside the point.
yeah.
And I'm up. This movie is like, when you watch this movie, you can think about like they eat the father on a religious level. We haven't even discussed that.
Yeah,
Like,
we
our
could get into the
father-
whole Christology of this thing.
The whole Christology of this movie and the
The flesh,
Freudianism.
the blood.
Yeah,
What?
eat of my. This is my our Father who is in heaven. You know, and eat of my flesh, and
And
this is
he's
my
like
blood. you
spread
drink.
out on the table like
Yeah,
this,
he's spread out like a cross.
across
This-
on the table.
If anything,
Dinner
this
table.
because this whole movie could be an indictment of the ugliest parts of Christian history. Could
Oh,
be.
It's definitely it's definitely in there. It's
Yeah, well,
definitely
I
like,
mean-
it doesn't make Freudianism look good either. It
No,
doesn't
like
make
some
modernism look very
people-
good either.
Yeah, I've heard when people talk about Christianity, they said when you take a different look at it, they said communion, what is communion? You're
Body of Christ.
drinking the blood and eating the flesh of Jesus.
And they
Or
believe
like if you weren't Christian
literal.
and someone just told you like, oh, we're gonna go do a ceremony where we're going to, and I think in Catholicism, like I remember someone telling me, oh no, this is the actual, and I was like, well, it's not the actual, and they're like, no, this is the blood and the flesh, and I was like, okay.
That's
Like, I
where the
just was
term
like, okay.
that's
So
where the term Jack in the pulpit comes from.
yeah,
Because Jack is Jesus, the wafer, and they keep him in the pulpit. So Jack's in the pulpit.
Oh, is it? I'm going to use that saying from now on. Actually.
What do they call the wine?
I don't know what they call the wine. That must be part of Jack too. But basically, there was I can't remember which religions debated on it, but one was like, oh no. When he does a ritual, it becomes Jack. And the other's
They
like,
call
no,
it
don't
transabsolutary
Transabsolutionarianism.
or something.
What?
Trans-
You made that up. You made that up.
No, we didn't.
Transabsolutionarianism.
No, it's something else.
it's a great word.
Body.
Write that one down. Transabsolutionism.
You don't even know what it
Wafer.
The them I'm dating is a transabsolutionariist.
There you go.
No,
You did that.
transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation.
That's the term they use for what happens when you eat the wafer and drink the wine. It's
That becomes the flesh.
It becomes it, whatever that means.
Okay, so
Right.
if you look at it, I mean, I'm a Christian, but you know, so some people would be like, how dare you discuss it like this? But if you just take it from that perspective, it's like, well, what do you call that when you're eating the flesh and drinking the blood of something?
It's called eating
Throwing
the
it out
flesh and drinking
Well, it's like-
blood, aka if it's a human, cannibalism.
Well, the idea is like if you eat blood and flesh for nourishment for your body, you eat the body of Christ for nourishment for your soul.
True.
This
That's a
was
good point.
basically the church's way to try to get these freakish tribes to stop eating actual human flesh. And they,
Good point.
like, I mean, when they were Christianizing, it took 1,000 years to get these animals to
But it
behave
worked.
like normal human beings, and the Christians were like,
It
okay,
worked.
we'll turn Jesus into this thing. We'll give this that they needed. They have to sacrifice some kind of human. This guy died for their sins, and well, that's all like later inventions. They did that because they had to connect with these people that were like the cast of this movie, like the people in this movie.
These people in this movie are like
they're just
Amish
a throwback.
cannibals.
They're a throwback.
These are
to, like-
Amish cannibals.
Yeah,
That's my pitch. If you want a movie about
Protestants.
Amish cannibals being investigated by a Chekhovian doctor, this is the movie. This is the only movie with Amish cannibals and a Chekhovian doctor that I know.
Protestantism. Protestantism. John Calvin. We
All
read
right.
your history books.
Okay, so my recommendation, my final thought for this film alludes back to what I said earlier. If you want to recommend a movie for someone that's horror and a little bit dark, but not super gory, that they can stand, and especially if people love to talk about the meanings in films and it's a film that you can walk away from and discuss what happened. Where in like action films, you're just like, oh, that was a fun movie. But this one is something that you can really get into some conversations about and some moral questions after you're done watching it.
especially how the characters felt too, because they didn't have a lot of inner monologues.
Yeah,
It
I'll
was a
add
lot of
to,
action.
I'm going to add to what Judy just said and say that I think that this is one of those movies that like I could watch with my parents who don't like horror movies, but
Mhm,
you know, sort of appreciate thrillers. I
mhm.
could get them to watch this and they wouldn't turn away. They would be able to deal with the level of gore.
Mhm.
And they like this. They would like how psychotic it is.
Your dad, especially. From
My
what-
dad,
Yeah.
especially because he's obsessed with cannibalism.
It's like right up his alley.
Yeah.
I thought about Isaac's dad while I watched this movie. Also, the child actor, the boy, is amazing. We didn't talk about child acting. It's
Yeah.
really hard to find
Well,
a
these-
child.
It said on
It's
Wikipedia
spot
that
on.
these older the older girls were that all the children in this movie were like really disturbed by it. And the boy, the parents agreed to let him do the movie under the one clause that he only be involved in scenes that he's involved in. He doesn't see anything else that goes on set.
Cool.
And if he doesn't need to be there while the girls are eating father's arms and going like that with their head banging onto his arm, he's not going to be there for that.
Yeah.
I think that's what the parents wanted to make sure of because it's a rough environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know many. I did know many child actors growing up, rather, but I don't know many of them that weren't seriously screwed up in some way by the experience. So it's difficult, but these kids did a great job.
Yeah.
Brad Ram.
Mm.
Yeah, that kid never did a movie again.
No, I know
Yeah.
he's a science professor in Texas.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
God bless Texas.
You know, the kid in the little baby kid in Pet Cemetery, the original Pet Cemetery, he works all the time in horror movies now because
Yeah.
they want the guy who is like, "Come play with me, daddy." They want
Oh
that
God,
kid.
that movie creeped me out so much as a kid.
Yeah, so good.
All right, guys, let me tell
All right.
you
Okay,
what we
yeah.
have in store.
Okay.
We're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a double feature that I pitched to Seth, and Seth agreed to do it with me. So we're going to do both of our turns with this double feature. 2 movies about teenage depravity.
All right, hold on, let me get a pencil.
The first movie is an 80s film that my sister, who's that much older than me, probably grew up with that as her sort of teenage rite of passage kind of twisted movie about teenagers. If she saw it, I have to ask her. But she definitely, the book that it's based on by Bret Easton Ellis, Less Than Zero. They made a film. Have you guys seen it yet?
I had it on VHS. Yeah.
Okay. Have you
I
seen
watched
it?
it in
Judy?
1987. Yeah,
I don't remember. It sounds familiar.
So it's a book about really, just deranged rich LA kids. That's the first movie. The second movie is none other than Kids from
Oh man.
the mid
Yes, I've
90s.
seen that.
And so we're going to do a study of 80s teen depravity film, and then a 90s teen depravity film that was a coming of age experience for me because I actually grew up with kids. I knew kids that were in that movie because that was a movie about kids like me in New York City who smoke pot and skateboard and do graffiti and get into trouble and whatever. I went to school with kids that were in that movie. So, I thought this would just be an interesting thing to try out.
Yeah.
So we'll figure it out maybe within a couple weeks so we have more time to watch these 2 movies. What do you guys
Cool.
think about that?
Sounds great.
Great. So we're going to discuss both of these films in one.
Yes, both of these films
Okay.
in one episode and sort of as a compare and contrast. And I just think it's going to be an interesting subject.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we could do other things like that in the future if this one works.
Okay.
Okay, and then I get to go.
Yeah.
Then it's your turn.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kids.
Yeah.
I don't like Harmony Korman. I don't like her.
I haven't seen either. I've
Ever?
only seen.
I
pieces.
tried one-
That's why I'm so excited to do this with
I
Seth.
tried watching Gummo, and oh god, all
It's
right.
not a good movie.
I don't know. Well, Kids was like, yeah, I remember. other, young adults, they were like, "Yo, that movie, man." I saw clips of it online. And
All
I
right.
guess,
Well, when you
No,
when you
oh,
get the
yeah.
historical context and all the personal details that like how that movie, it's I don't actually, Sean. If you hate it, that's even better.
Better.
These are in particular kids, but these types of movies, first of all, and these specific ones themselves, I think are not even nearly as controversial as they should be. I think if you absolutely hated either of these movies, I can totally respect that. If you sort of love them in a sort of weird, like, oh, it's kind of how did they do that? There's some really amazing things about. One thing you'll know, and I don't want to get too much because we're going to do this, but like the acting by these so-called non-actors in kids is acting on a level that most people will never see in their lives. We're talking about teenagers that they're not acting, but they're also not improvising. This was a script that was written out. I need you guys to keep that in mind when you watch Kids for the second time or however many times if you've already seen it. These are kids from the street who look like they're just improvising, but it's a script. And they took that script, and there's no way the script was written as what they took the script up.
Mm.
And these are just a bunch of random kids from the street. So this is a character thing in a lot of ways for Seth, because I think there's a lot to study with these characters in both movies, by the way. But anyway, that's all I'll say about it. And I'm looking forward to doing this one. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the last one.
It was quite the ride, that last one, man. We could talk about that forever.